Welcome to the Seesaw Scenario with Eric and Mark Playground Rules podcast. People pay thousands to millions of dollars for wisdom, as seen with King Solomon, who would receive tons of gold in exchange for the wisdom God gave him, all the way to current times where people like Eric Thomas, Tony Robbins, and Jocko Willink make a pretty decent living exchanging their wisdom for buying power. Most of us haven't found that space where the wisdom God has given us finds a place to land and grow. As we find ourselves on whatever playground we have chosen, we often find ourselves surrounded by people unwilling to listen. Maybe we're approaching the playground executive all wrong by seeking their approval. Instead, what would happen if, like Solomon, we prayed for influence? In King Solomon's case, God amplified the influence he already had, but the point being, and the point I wish to analyze is, what is the intangible influence that God gave King Solomon that he couldn't obtain by himself? This, in a way, is an approach from a different vantage point to the faith versus science. How say you, Sean and Mark?
Eric, I love that scenario, and I'd love to also hear what Mark has to say. But here's my thing, right, on King Solomon's story or the example you gave. King Solomon came from a place of wanting to help his descendants and wanting to help his people. So his heart was coming from the right place. His heart was not to make the riches or not to make the money, but more to help his people. And that's where God went and said that since his heart is coming from the right place, I will give you more than what you've asked for. With Tony Robbins, a lot of these people, I think often these people started off with the heart to help people, and the same, right? The riches and the glory and everything followed. So that would be my advice, right? Always start with the heart of of helping people and making a difference in people's lives, or making difference in people's situation. The riches and everything else will come in its right time and will come at the right place. Thank you.
This is a very interesting topic, guys. Let me start out by saying and giving you credit where credit is due. You certainly know a lot more about King Solomon than I do, both of you. So we'll get that out of the way first. But thank you for sharing that information with the rest of us. And also, I always like to appeal to the historic or theological references. I think that from my standpoint, it boils down to people are willing to pay for knowledge these days, right? But are they willing to pay for wisdom? That's another question. So let's say, for example, somebody has to pay a certain tuition to go to a trade school. They learn how to work with computers or electronics or any number of things, and that translates to what? To career opportunities where they can make money and pay their bills, have families, whatever it is they're going to do with their lives, right? Any number of things. But those are specific skills and specific pieces of knowledge that people are trying to acquire. Wisdom is a different matter altogether. Wisdom is kind of a little bit more intricate. Wisdom is something that maybe you can get from a podcast like the Eric and Mark Show, and Sean, who has joined us in recent months. For many of for much of our programming. This is based on more like intuition and also knowledge, but to some degree life experience. Wisdom is also something that we seek from maybe older people because they have that life experience. Maybe when we were kids, we'd go to grandma or grandpa to get some wisdom from them. And it's one of those things that people still seek. But again, I think that it's more in the context of day-to-day life that doesn't always produce necessarily a material outcome. So there are some exceptions. For example, the Dear Abby column, which has been around, I read, since 1956. The Dear Abby column is a column that people write to get advice about their lives and everything. So I'm sure that column, without knowing a ton about it, it's generated some revenue for the columnist, or a reputation, something to build a career foundation on, and that kind of thing. But I think that when you talk about wisdom, I think that's something that's learned, acquired, or kind of like more maybe read about or word of mouth thing, not as much being educated by it or paying a certain amount to get a quantifiable amount of wisdom in return, whereas maybe knowledge itself is a little more quantifiable. That's my thought on it.